Hey, what's up guys, my name is Cherno and welcome back to episode 126 of Game Programming. So it's been a while since the last episode. We had the whole Serialization series there in between. So the first thing I want to start off this video with is just saying that if you guys haven't watched the Serialization series, I highly recommend you go watch that right now because that's part of this series as well. I just wanted to make it a standalone series so that people not watching Game Programming could also watch the Serialization series and, you know, enjoy that. So there'll be a link in the description to the playlist for all of those videos. That series is complete. Basically, last time you would have remembered that we left off. We created like this net player thing, and we just ended up having this kind of fake player here in the middle here of our level. And the biggest thing that we were kind of trying to solve, I guess, was being able to send data, of course, because we're doing multiplayer now. We've started our long journey towards implementing multiplayer, and the biggest kind of aspect of multiplayer, of course, apart from the actual network code, is the actual transmission of data, right? So we need to be able to both send and receive data in some kind of format. So what we did in that serialization series was create that format and create a whole library, really, that would allow us to serialize and deserialize data, right? That's the whole idea of that, right? So we created this thing called Rain Cloud because it's kind of like rain, which is the name of our game, plus cloud because, you know, it's like on the cloud, it's like a network thing. Anyway, it was pretty funny. It was a pretty good name anyway. But all that aside, we created Rain Cloud, and that was like our library that we could use to basically set a bunch of like fields. Like we could pretty much, ultimately you could copy pretty much any objects hierarchy, like any object that we have in our game, we could kind of, I guess, convert into this format and then send that over the network to someone else who could then kind of receive that data, deserialize it, and then actually use it, right? And that's the whole idea of how multiplayer is going to work, of course. It's just going to be basically packing the data we want to send into this format, sending that format as a bunch of packets, and then, converting that format into something that we can use on the other side. Okay, that's it. So that being said, go ahead and watch that series if you haven't already, because it'll teach you a lot, probably. But if you like, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to pretend that series never happened, and I'm just going to basically go to github.com/thecherno/Java Serialization, which is the actual GitHub repository. This is again, I'll leave a link in the description to this as well. But basically, this is all of the code that we have. This is all we need. We've actually got two things here. We've got Sandbox, which is kind of an example use case, which we might actually refer to because I've kind of forgotten how to use this. It's been a while. But then, of course, this Rain Cloud stuff is actually the code that we're looking for. So we're going to set that up right now inside our Rain project because we want to be able to use that library to convert all of our objects and all of our data into this format so that we can then send it. So the first thing we'll do is, you can clone the GitHub repository if you want. I'm just going to download it as a zip file because I don't really care about maintaining any kind of, like, this is never going to be updated probably, but also I just literally just want the Rain Cloud Serialization project here. So I'll copy that. I'll go to my workspace, which is basically just the location of this particular workspace. You'll notice I only have one project in here. That I would recommend that you, essentially a workspace in Eclipse works kind of similarly to how a solution does in Visual Studio, right? If you're familiar with that for some reason. Basically that's kind of how it works, right? So every time you start a new project, like if it's a fairly large project like this one is, for example, you'll probably have a bunch of different projects in your kind of workspace, which all kind of link together, right? So like if I, for example, wanted to make some tools, like to help us edit levels or like a level viewer tool, I would also make like it as a separate project inside this workspace. So the way that I treat workspaces is essentially like Visual Studio Solutions in the sense that this is a collection of projects that relate to kind of one main project, right? And in this case, that project is rain. So that being said, you can see that inside this workspace, I only have that one project. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that rain cloud serialization thing and paste it in here, right? And so this actually just contains the project. It's even got like a class path project. It's got pretty much everything I want here. And then all I really want to do now is, since I'm already in this workspace, and I can close that other thing. All I really need to, excuse me, all I really need to do is just create a new Java project which has the same name, right? And it'll automatically configure everything and import that project into this like workspace. Because the other thing that's missing right now is, I mean, inside, I'm not 100% sure where this is in Eclipse, because Eclipse like just loves to like look at all this stuff. There's so much stuff going on here. But somewhere in here, it's got a list of projects that are inside this workspace. And all we really need to do is just add this existing project into there. So the best way I've found doing that is just making a new project with the same name rather than importing an existing project, which I mean, I remember back in the day it used to be terrible. Maybe it's good now, but this is also easy. So name it the exact same thing as this folder, which contains your source directory and your class path and your project, and then just hit finish. Okay, cool. So you should be able to browse the code and everything should be fine. We should have pretty much everything that I mean, this is just a library. This doesn't have like a main method or anything. You won't be able to run this, but you also don't need to run this. We're just going to use it in our other project. So the big question now is, how do we actually get, you know, this rain cloud serialization? How do we link it to this rain project so that we can actually use it inside this you know, this project, or inside our game? So the way that we do that, and again, I covered this in like the first or second, or I don't know, I covered this in one of the serialization episodes as well, but it's really easy. You just need to right click on the project, on rain in our case, hit properties, go to your Java build path, projects, and then just add this rain cloud serialization as a project to this. Okay, so basically this will just set it as one of the required projects, like for the build path, or for the building essentially. So if we hit OK, you'll notice that whatever namespace we had here, or whatever package we had in here, which was com.thecherno.raincloud, for example, you can see that now it's actually like accessible. Okay, so what we'll do is, I mean, right now we'll just test this out. I didn't want to make this episode too long. In fact, I'm going to try and make shorter episodes and put them out more frequently rather than longer episodes less frequently, because I feel that that'll keep you guys more engaged. And also it'll be easier for me. So what I'll do is, just for this video, we'll kind of just, I guess, use this. So I'll go back to the example real quick. So in the sandbox, we've got main, I think, which just really just, or sandbox, these look the same. Anyway, okay, so here we go. So what we did was, okay, so the approach that we took was creating like an actual method called serialize and deserialize in every single class that kind of needs to be serializable, which is fine. And then we just did, so created a database, we created an object, we added certain strings, fields, blah, 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 and then we serialize it to a file, and then the loading side of that is pretty much the same. So I'll refer to this. So we'll go ahead and let's just for example, grab our, I don't know, what's something, okay, let's just serialize like the screen's width and height, just for fun, just to test this out, really. So we've got, I'll make a quick private void save, we'll call that. So we'll make a database. We'll call it screen. Remember, this is just the name of the database, not the file. We will add an object. So I guess we need to create an object first. We'll call it dimensions or resolution. import that. We'll add 2 fields to this. So we'll add a field called width. Actually, we need to create this using rc field.integer. So 2 integer fields. One will be called width, and we'll have a value of whatever width is. We'll have height as well. And I'm probably missing, oh, I've got an extra bracket there, an extra parenthesis. So, and then we'll add the object to the database, and then we'll just do database serialize to file. We'll put this in our resources, maybe data, and I'll call this screen.bin or something. Okay, so done. So if I launch the game now, looks like we get an error because system can't find the file specified. That's odd. Does this file need to, oh, because the directory needs to exist. Yeah, this is a bit annoying. I think the directory just needs to exist. So if we go back here, res data, then that works. Okay, cool. So now you can see that inside data we should have the screen.bin thing. And if we open this in like Sublime Text or something, you know, well, actually, I don't know why I opened it in Sublime Text. It's pretty useless, isn't it? In our little hex editor, hxd, highly recommend. Then you can see we've got screen, blah, 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 say db, width, height, set to whatever. And then if we wanted to deserialize that just for fun, then we could make a quick load thing. So for example, let's quickly bring this out into a private void set size. Right, and I hope this isn't like some kind of, okay, that's fine. We'll cut this, we'll do set size. So we'll do this, rc database db equals rc database.deserialize from file. Now I believe what this does is if we give it res data screen.bin, I believe what this will do is, unfortunately not. I was hoping it would just, okay, well we can modify it, but then that'll be modifying the, I assume we can just return like null or something if it doesn't work out. So in this case, if we do something like this instead of that catastrophe, then we'll just say that if db equals null, then we will take the existing width and height, which we have already set up by this width thing and height. Otherwise, or in fact, if db doesn't equal null, here's what we'll do instead. We'll just do width equals, I guess scale is something we probably want to save as well. Just scale's done. So we'll do something like width equals db dot, so I guess we should get the object, right? So rc object obj equals rc object dot, that's not what I want at all, db dot get or find object, name will be resolution, obj dot, I have no idea how to use my own API, find field, I guess. And then how do we get that as an integer? Oh, get int, right. So we'll find the field of width, height, and scale. Done, okay? So we'll deserialize them if it exists, if not, then whatever, okay? So now the purpose of this is, let's do the save first, just quickly, so that we save scale as well. But the idea is that if we were to, you know, do the save here or something, I think I made that load. Yeah, we'll get rid of load. If I run this now, hopefully what you'll see is the same result, right? However, now it's actually reading it from the file. So if I was to edit this, now this is going to be a little bit difficult to edit because it's binary, but we'll do it. So let's say, where's the width? Width, and then where's the actual width? I guess this is the actual width. I have no idea. I guess these 4 bytes are the ends, are the width. Okay, so whatever. Let's just change DC to like AC and save that. I have no idea what this is gonna do. Okay, that worked kind of. Okay, that did work. The reason that it didn't work fully is just because of our thing. You can see that the window that it opened was less wide, yeah, which is the idea because I reduced the width. But the reason that we had the crash was because this buffered image and all of this stuff that gets created actually gets created based on the size. So we need to fix that. And we can fix that pretty easily just by doing this. Right, for now at least, and this will kind of set the size, I guess. So if we run this now, hopefully, okay, you can see it works, right? We've still got like rendering errors, that's to be expected because we don't support resolutions like that. But you can see that by doing something like this, we can, of course, change this. So AC, let's make it really small. Let's make it like 3 or something. You can see it's nice and narrow now, right? So I think DC was the initial thing. Okay, great. So you can see kind of how we can now serialize data very easily. It's incredibly easy to both save data and then also load data. And of course, if we didn't have this file, like if this file were to get deleted for some reason, then it would just default to whatever this is. So you can see the file doesn't exist right now. Actually, it would have gotten recreated. So the file doesn't exist right now, and we ended up with a very wide screen. Okay, cool. So anyway, that's the way that that works. Now we're back to normal. You can see how we can easily kind of use this serialization library to, you know, even do really, really simple things. The other really cool thing that we could do is ultimately use this as like a data kind of tool, so to speak, right? So in other words, instead of us taking in certain parameters, like we're not really modeling gameplay right now, but if we were, then this is just designed to like inspire you guys, I guess. But like, for example, we're you know, working on particle animation. Instead of having to have all these values, all these magic kind of values here that we use all the time that, you know, are only really tweakable. This isn't as big as a problem in Java, by the way, because really it just means that if we want to tweak them, we can just tweak them, hit Control S, and it'll automatically like hot replace our code for us. But the idea is that obviously if this was like C++ or really anything except for Java, then having like just like a serialization file that we could just reload that had all of our data in there would be awesome, because it means that we can kind of even go as far as to create a tool that we could just use to edit values inside this database instead of having to use a hex editor or something, to tweak certain parameters and then see them applied in the game in real time, right? But again, with Java, we can kind of do the hot code replacing, so it's not as big of a deal, but it's still pretty cool. And the reason you would want to do stuff like that is because, of course, it just means that you're separating your data from your code, which is pretty much always a good idea. Because, you know, for example, if we want to... essentially, the whole reason you want to separate data from code, so to speak, is because, like, data is more or less like an asset, right? Like certain parameters in your game, for example, like the statistics of enemies or something, and like potentially, you know, like how powerful certain weapons are, for example, that stuff is not really at all the programmer's job, right? It's usually like done by the designer or something, and those people usually, you know, don't want to be editing source code. Even if they can write code, they don't want to be editing source code. But also it means that if you kind of separate those, not only does it mean that they can kind of edit they can use a certain program, like a certain tool, or a certain, even just like Notepad or something, to edit certain values and tweak them outside of the game's source code. It also means that they are literally separate files, and so they can be updated without actually changing the binaries of the game, which is also important, right? So the idea is that tying data to code is not always, it's not ideal. And by doing something like this, it also means that, you know, we, to an extent, you know, all you have to do is just, you know, that screen.bin file, you replace it with something else and it will do whatever that file says, right? So it becomes really, really convenient. And of course, as we explore networking and multiplayer, we'll also realize that it also means that we can send data pretty easily. You can see that like creating a new database and saving, you know, 3 fields into it was as simple as this, right? And I mean, that creates a file, that creates quite a tiny file as well. Like that bin file is probably like, I don't know. In fact, we could probably check if we were really keen. Screen.bin, how big are you? 84 bytes, right? Tiny. Could be a lot smaller, of course. I mean, if you could go to the extreme of just storing like. Anyway, the point is that we have this format now that we can use, and we will be extensively using that for networking. All right, cool. So if you guys enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. A few things I want to mention real quick is if you want to discuss this video in more or less like a real-time fashion, then I highly recommend that you join my Slack. I've got a Slack account here, or a Slack team. All you have to do is enter your email address and you'll be able to join essentially like what is an instant messenger. So here's like an example of the game programming channel. It's got a lot of I've got quite a few channels here, but basically it's all totally like real time. The game programming channel isn't very active, again, it's because I haven't probably been putting out too many videos, but there are 122 people here. So if you guys have any questions, or you just want to talk about this episode, or maybe you have some other questions or problems you're having with your game programming source code, then join Slack using this if you haven't already, and then just go join the game programming channel and you'll be able to talk about game programming. Also, if you guys want access to the source code of game programming, I mean, obviously Rain Cloud Serialization is up on GitHub for free, but if you want to access the Rain source code, then all you have to do is go to my Patreon and pledge at least $5 per month. And if you do so, first of all, it supports me making more game programming videos, but also it gives you access to this private GitHub repository where every single, well, apart from seeing all of the source code over here, right, you also get to see like pretty much every commit as it goes along. So for example, in episode 125, you can easily like diff the changes from last episode, and it's just really, really convenient. Because yeah, I mean, if you're into that, then it's definitely a good way to help me out and also get rewarded for that. All right, that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed. Next episode will hopefully be within a week. I do want to start punching these out a bit more often. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.